Now starting another original tale from Korafika Tales, an exclusive work from our publishing house, narrated by Joanne. Enjoy the story. The divorce papers were supposed to end it. 3 years of silence, 3 years of distance, 3 years of pretending she never existed. But when Min-jae found her in that parking lot, everything he thought he knew exploded. She was crying, shaking, and beside her, 2 children. His children, 4 years old, hidden, unknown, impossible. The most powerful man in the city had just discovered he was a father, and the woman who disappeared without explanation had been raising them alone, protecting them from the empire he'd built in shadows. Now his past and his blood are colliding, his enemies are circling, and the only way to save them might destroy everything he is. This is the story of a king who never knew he had heirs, and the woman who kept the most dangerous secret of all. Approximate character. Count. 8,000. The rain came down like judgment. Min-jae stood beneath the overhang of the high-rise parking garage, phone pressed to his ear, his voice cold and measured. The kind of voice that ended arguments before they began, the kind that made grown men reconsider their choices. "I don't care what his excuse is," he said quietly. He had a week. He failed. Handle it. He ended the call without waiting for a response. 32 years old, owner of half the commercial real estate in the city, silent partner in enterprises that didn't ask questions, heir to a legacy built in whispers and enforced through fear. And tonight, he was supposed to sign divorce papers that had been delayed for 3 years. Min-jae had sent his attorney to finalize it months ago. Clean, efficient, final, no contact, no drama. Just the legal dissolution of a marriage that had died long before the paperwork was filed. But 2 hours ago, his lawyer called. She'd canceled the meeting. No explanation. No rescheduling. Just canceled. It made no sense. She'd been the one to leave. She'd been the one to walk out of the penthouse 3 years ago without looking back. She'd been the one who'd gone silent, vanished into a life he'd stopped trying to imagine, and now she was refusing to end it. Min-jae didn't do confusion. He did control, so he'd traced her location through contacts he wasn't supposed to use for personal matters, found her last known address, drove across the city in the rain with his jaw tight and his patience thinner than the thread holding his composure together. The parking garage was attached to a modest apartment complex on the west side. Nothing like the world they'd shared. Nothing like the life he still lived. He stepped into the rain, his black coat catching the downpour as he moved toward the rows of parked cars. His shoes echoed on wet concrete. His breath formed clouds in the cold air. And then he saw her, Ji-hee. She was standing beside an old sedan, her back to him, her shoulders trembling. Even from 20 feet away, he could hear it, the sound of someone trying not to break. Min-jae stopped. She looked thinner. Her hair was longer, pulled into a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a worn jacket that had seen better years. The woman who used to move through charity galas in designer gowns now looked like she'd been carrying the weight of the world on her own. He should have called out, should have demanded answers, should have stayed cold. But something in the way she stood there, shaking, alone, soaked, made him move forward in silence. And that's when he heard them. Small voices, high-pitched, uncertain. "Mommy? Are we going home now?" Min-jae froze. His eyes shifted past her to the open car door. 2 small figures sat in the back seat, strapped into booster seats, their dark eyes wide and curious. Children. Twins. Identical faces. Round cheeks. Black hair that curled slightly at the ends. 4 years old. Maybe 5. His mind did the math before his heart could stop it. "No. Ji-hee." His voice came out rougher than he intended. She spun around, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. For a moment, she just stared at him like she'd seen a ghost. "Min-jae," she whispered. Her hand flew to her mouth. He took another step forward, his gaze locked on the children in the back seat. They were watching him now, curious and cautious, the way kids look at strangers. "Whose children are those?" His voice was barely audible. Ji-hye's breath hitched. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she choked. "Please don't. Whose children, Ji-hye?" She closed her eyes. Her whole body trembled. And then, in a voice so broken it barely sounded like hers, she whispered, "Ours." The world stopped. The rain, the distant hum of the city, the sound of his own heartbeat. Everything just stopped. Min-jae stared at her, then at the children, then back at her. "What did you say?" "They're yours," she said, her voice cracking. "They're ours. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He couldn't move, couldn't think. His entire existence had just split into before and after, and he was standing in the wreckage of everything he thought he knew. 4 years, he said slowly. You've been raising my children for 4 years. I had to, she whispered. I had to protect them. From what? She looked at him then, and the answer was in her eyes. From you, from the Empire, from the violence, from the world he lived in. Min Jae's hands curled into fists. His chest felt like it was caving in. Rage and grief and disbelief tangled together until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. You had no right, he said, his voice shaking. You had no right to keep them from me. You had no right to build the life you built. She shot back, her voice breaking. I couldn't bring them into that. I couldn't let them grow up the way you did. One of the children, the boy, Min Jae realized numbly, leaned forward in his seat. Mommy, who is that man? Ji-hee's face crumpled. Min Jae looked at his son, a child who didn't know him, who had no idea that the man standing in the rain was his father. His voice failed him. He had faced down rivals, had stared down men twice his size without flinching, had built an empire on the strength of his will alone, and he couldn't finish a sentence in front of a 4-year-old. Ji-hee wiped her eyes and turned to the children, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He's an old friend, sweetheart. We just need to talk for a minute, okay? The boy nodded slowly, still watching Min Jae with those wide, uncertain eyes. Min Jae took a step back, then another. His entire foundation was crumbling, and he didn't know how to stop it. We need to talk, he said hoarsely. Now. Ji-hee glanced at the children, then back at him. Not here, she whispered. Not in front of them. Then where? She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, scribbled an address, handed it to him with trembling fingers. Tomorrow, she said quietly. Noon. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Min Jae took the paper. His hand was shaking. He looked at her, at the woman he'd once loved more than anything, at the mother of children he'd never known existed. If you run, he said softly, I will find you. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Ji-hee nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I'm not running anymore, she whispered. That's why I canceled the divorce. And before he could respond, she turned away, climbed into the driver's seat, and closed the door. The engine started. The headlights flared, and Min Jae stood in the rain, watching the taillights disappear into the night, his world completely and irrevocably shattered. He had children, twins, a son and a daughter, and the woman who'd kept them from him had just walked back into his life. Min Jae looked down at his hands. They were still shaking. For the first time in a decade, he had no idea what to do. Approximate character count, 8,000. Min Jae didn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse office, staring at the city lights below, his mind replaying the parking lot scene over and over like a film reel stuck on repeat. The children's faces, their voices, the way they'd looked at him like he was a stranger. Because he was. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally he picked it up. What? Boss? We have a situation with the shipment from... Handle it, Min Jae said flatly. But you said... I said handle it. He ended the call. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, suffocating. He had children. The thought kept circling back, relentless and impossible. He'd spent the last 3 years convincing himself Ji-hee was better off without him. That leaving had been her choice. That their marriage had been a mistake born from youthful passion and doomed from the start. And the entire time, she'd been raising his children alone. Min Jae stood and walked to the window. His reflection stared back at him. Sharp suit, cold eyes, the face of a man who'd learned early that weakness was fatal. His father had taught him that. His father, who'd ruled the family with brutality and precision. Who'd made Min Jae watch punishments as a child to toughen him up. Who died in a hail of bullets when Min Jae was 17, leaving him an empire, and no instructions on how to be anything other than what he'd been raised to become. A king, a monster, and now, a father. The word felt foreign in his mind. He thought of the boy in the back seat, the girl beside him, their small hands, their innocent questions. What kind of father could he possibly be? The kind who ordered men to disappear, who made decisions that destroyed lives, who lived in a world where loyalty was bought and betrayal was punished without mercy. Ji-hee had been right to hide them. The thought burned, but he couldn't deny it. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message. From her. Café Solon. Noon. Come alone. Min Jae stared at the text. Come alone. She didn't trust him. Of course she didn't. He typed a response. I'll be there. Then he set the phone down and returned to the window, watching the city sleep while his entire world remained wide awake and unrecognizable. The cafe was small, quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat on a street that didn't ask questions. Min-jae arrived 15 minutes early, alone as requested. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans. No bodyguards, no entourage, nothing that screamed who he was or what he controlled. Just a man walking into a cafe to meet his ex-wife. The title felt wrong now. She'd canceled the divorce. Why? He ordered a black coffee he wouldn't drink and sat in the back corner, his back to the wall, his eyes on the door. At 12:03, she walked in. Ji-hai looked different in daylight. Tired, guarded, but still achingly familiar. She spotted him immediately and made her way over, her movements careful, like she was approaching something dangerous. Maybe she was. She slid into the seat across from him, her hands folded tightly on the table. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Min-jae didn't respond. He just looked at her, waiting. She took a breath. "I know you have questions." That's an understatement. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, he saw the girl he'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. The one who'd smiled at him across a university library and made him believe he could be something other than his father's son. "I was pregnant when I left," she said softly. "I found out 2 weeks before I walked out." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "And you didn't tell me." "I couldn't." "Why?" "Because I knew what would happen." Her voice broke. "You would have kept me, locked me in that tower you call a home, surrounded me with guards and rules and fear. You would have controlled every part of my life and called it protection." "They're my children," he said, his voice dangerously low. "I had a right to know. And what would you have done with that right?" She shot back, her eyes flashing. "Raised them in your world? Let them grow up watching you become your father?" The words hit like a physical blow. Min-jae leaned back, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "I am not my father," he said through gritted teeth. "Aren't you?" She leaned forward. "Tell me, Min-jae, in the last 3 years, have you done anything that would prove that? Have you walked away from the family business? Have you built a life that doesn't revolve around power and fear?" He said nothing, because she was right, and they both knew it. Ji-hai's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," she whispered. "I left because I loved you too much to watch you disappear into that world completely. And I loved our children too much to let them watch it too." "Our children," Min-jae repeated, the words still foreign. "What are their names?" She hesitated. Then softly, "Min-ho and Ji-ah." "Min-ho, Ji-ah, his son, his daughter." "Why did you cancel the divorce?" he asked. Ji-hai looked down at her hands. "Because 3 weeks ago, a man followed me home from the grocery store." Min-jae went still. "He didn't do anything," she continued quickly. "Just watched, from across the street, and then he was gone. But I recognized the look in his eyes, the same look your father's men used to have." Ice flooded Min-jae's veins. "Someone from the family?" "I don't know, but it scared me. I realized that even if I kept running, even if I stayed hidden, eventually someone would find us. And if they did," she trailed off, her voice shaking. "If they knew the twins existed, they'd become leverage, targets. So you canceled the divorce to what? Ask for my protection?" "No," she met his eyes. "I canceled it because you're their father, and if something happens to me, they need to know who you are. They need to have a chance." Min-jae felt something crack inside his chest. "You think I'd let anything happen to them?" "I think you're the most dangerous man I've ever known," she said quietly. "And I think you're the only one who can keep them safe." They sat in silence, the weight of 4 years, the weight of 2 lives, the weight of a truth neither of them could run from anymore. "I want to meet them," Min-jae said finally. "Properly." Ji-hee's breath hitched. "Min-jae, they're my children," he said, his voice firm but not harsh. "I've lost 4 years. I won't lose another day." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Reassurance, maybe, or proof that he wouldn't destroy the fragile world she'd built. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "but we do this slowly, on my terms. You don't just walk into their lives and upend everything." "Agreed. And no guards, no cars, no display of what you are. Fine." She pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. "Tomorrow," she said. 4 p.m. There's a park near my apartment. We'll be there." Min-jae took the address she sent. Tomorrow, he would meet his children. As Ji-hai stood to leave, he caught her wrist gently. She froze. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said quietly. "Any of you." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's what I'm afraid of," she whispered. And then she pulled away and walked out into the daylight, leaving Min-jae alone with a cold coffee and a heart that wouldn't stop racing. Approximate character count, 8,000. The park was small, a patch of green tucked between apartment buildings with swings, a slide, and a sandbox that had seen better days. Min-jae arrived 10 minutes early. No suit, no bodyguards, just a man in a dark jacket and jeans, standing awkwardly near a bench, watching children play and wondering how the hell he'd ended up here. He'd faced down armed rivals without flinching, but the thought of meeting a 4-year-old terrified him. At 4:02, he saw them. Ji-hai walked into the park holding both children's hands. They were dressed in bright jackets, Minho in blue, Jia in yellow, their small faces lit with the kind of joy only children possess. Min-jae's breath caught. They were beautiful. They had Ji-hee's smile, his eyes, a perfect blend of everything they'd been before the world had broken them apart. Ji-hai spotted him and said something to the twins. They looked over, curious but cautious, and then they walked toward him. Min-jae's hands clenched at his sides. He had no script for this, no strategy, no control. He was completely, utterly out of his depth. "Hi," Ji-hai said softly when they reached him. "Hi," he managed. She knelt down beside the twins, her voice gentle. "Minho, Jia, this is Min-jae. He's someone very important, someone who cares about you very much." The little girl, Jia, tilted her head. "Are you Mommy's friend?" Min-jae's throat tightened. "Yes."
Before you continue, you have 2 choices right now. Keep listening to short previews, or unlock the full stories. You get 30 complete stories, over 30 hours of exclusive audio, no ads, no interruptions. Listen anytime, anywhere. Scan the QR code on the screen now, or click the pinned link in the comments. What was never said continues there,
he said quietly. "I'm your mommy's friend. Do you like swings?" Minho asked suddenly. The question was so innocent, so completely divorced from the weight of the moment, that Min-jae almost laughed. I don't know, he admitted. Minho's eyes widened. "You don't know if you like swings? I haven't been on one in a very long time." The boy grabbed his hand without hesitation. "Come on, I'll show you." And before Min-jae could process what was happening, he was being dragged toward the swing set by a 4-year-old with a grip stronger than it had any right to be. Ji-hai followed, Jia skipping beside her, and for a surreal moment they looked like a normal family spending a normal afternoon in a normal park. Except nothing about this was normal. Minho climbed onto a swing and looked at Min-jae expectantly. "You have to push me," he announced. Min-jae glanced at Ji-hai. She nodded encouragingly. He stepped behind the swing and gave it a gentle push. "Higher!" Minho shouted, laughing. Min-jae pushed harder. The boy's laughter filled the air, bright and uninhibited, and something inside Min-jae's chest cracked wide open. This was his son. His son. Jia tugged on his jacket. "Me too." And so he pushed her too, alternating between the 2 swings, listening to their laughter, watching their joy, and feeling like he'd stepped into a world he didn't deserve, but desperately wanted to stay in. After a while, the twins ran off to the slide, and Min-jae sank onto a bench beside Ji-hee. They sat in silence, watching the children play. "They're incredible," he said finally. "They are," Ji-hai agreed softly. "Do they ask about me?" She hesitated. "Sometimes. I told them their father loved them but couldn't be with us. I never said you were dead. I just said you were far away." Min-jae nodded slowly. "When are you going to tell them the truth?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know how." He looked at her, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear, the fierce protectiveness. "You did this alone," he said quietly. "For 4 years. I can't imagine how hard that was." Ji-hai's eyes welled up. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," she admitted. "But I'd do it again. Because they're safe. They're happy. They don't know what you are. What I was part of. What I am." Min-jae repeated. "Not who I am." She met his gaze. "Is there a difference anymore?" Before he could answer, Minho ran back over, breathless and grinning. "Min-jae, do you want to see my truck? It's the best truck ever." He held up a small yellow toy truck, dirt-streaked and well-loved. Min-jae took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. "It is a great truck," he said seriously. Minho beamed. "I got it for my birthday. Mommy says if I take good care of it, it'll last forever." "Your birthday," Min-jae said slowly. "When was that?" "October 12th, Minho announced proudly. October 12th, Min-jae's birthday. He looked at Ji-hee. She'd turned away, her jaw tight. She'd given their son his birthday. The weight of that, of everything she'd carried alone, pressed down on him like a physical force. "That's a very good birthday," he said quietly. Minho nodded and ran back to the sandbox where Jia was building a castle. Min-jae watched them, his mind racing. "I want to be part of their lives," he said. Jihai turned to look at him. Min-jae, I know what you're going to say. I know I'm dangerous. I know my world is dangerous. But they exist, Jihai. They're real. And I can't just walk away. I'm not asking you to walk away, she said quietly. I'm asking you to think about what being part of their lives actually means. You can't be two people. You can't be the man who runs an empire built on fear, and the man who pushes swings in a park. Why not? Because one will destroy the other. Her voice broke. And I won't let it destroy them. Min-jae stood, his hands clenched into fists. So what do you want from me? Money? Protection from a distance? To pretend I don't exist except when you need something? I want you to choose, she said, standing to face him. I want you to decide if you're going to be their father, or if you're going to stay the king, because you can't be both. You don't get to give me ultimatums. I'm not. Her voice was steady now, firm. I'm giving you the same choice I made 4 years ago. The same choice I make every single day. Them, or everything else. They stared at each other. Two people who'd loved each other once. Two people who'd built a life and watched it burn. Two people who now had something more important than either of them. I need time, Min-jae said finally. Time for what? To figure out how to do this. How to be what they need without losing everything I've built. Jihai shook her head sadly. That's the problem, Min-jae. You still think you can have both. Before he could respond, Jia came running over holding a dandelion. Look, I found a wish flower. She held it up to Min-jae, her eyes bright. Do you want to make a wish? Min-jae knelt down so he was eye level with her. What should I wish for? He asked softly. Jia thought about it very seriously. You should wish for something that makes you happy, she said. That's what Mommy always says. He looked at this little girl, his daughter, holding a dandelion and offering him the world's simplest wisdom. Okay, he said. I'll wish for something that makes me happy. He took the dandelion and blew. The seeds scattered into the wind, carried away into a sky he couldn't control. Jia clapped her hands. What did you wish for? She asked. Min-jae glanced at Jihi, at Minho in the sandbox, at the life unfolding in front of him that he'd never imagined existed. I can't tell you, he said gently, or it won't come true. But the truth was, he didn't know what he'd wished for. He didn't know if he'd wished to stay, or to leave, to fight for them, or to protect them by disappearing. All he knew was that for the first time in a decade, he wanted something more than power, and he had no idea how to get it. Approximate character count, 8,000. Min-jae didn't go home that night. He sat in his car outside Jihi's apartment building, watching the lights in her third-floor window flicker off one by one. First the living room, then the kitchen. Finally, the small bedroom where he knew his children were sleeping. His children. The words still didn't feel real. He'd spent 3 hours at that park. 3 hours pushing swings and listening to stories about preschool and learning that Minho loved dinosaurs and Jia was obsessed with butterflies. 3 hours being someone he'd forgotten how to be. And now he was back in his car, in the dark, in the world he actually belonged to. His phone buzzed. Daejong. Boss, we need to talk. Now. Min-jae closed his eyes. Daejong was his second in command, his oldest friend. The only person in the organization who could get away with texting him like that. He started the engine and drove. 20 minutes later, he walked into the private back room of a restaurant he owned. Daejong was already there, pacing, his expression dark. We have a problem, Daejong said, the moment Min-jae closed the door. When don't we? This is different. Daejong pulled out his phone and showed him a photo. Min-jae's blood turned to ice. It was Jihai, walking out of a grocery store. Minho and Jia on either side of her, holding her hands. The photo was taken from across the street, zoomed in, professional. Where did you get this? Min-jae's voice was deadly quiet. It was sent to the family council 2 hours ago, anonymously. The family council, the network of elders and underbosses who'd served his father, who still questioned whether Min-jae was strong enough to lead. Who sent it? We don't know yet, but whoever it is, they know about the woman, and they know about the kids. Min-jae's hands curled into fists. They're not just the kids, he said softly. They're my children. Daejong went still. Your what? My son and daughter, 4 years old. I just found out 3 days ago. For a long moment, Daejong just stared at him. Then he sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. Min-jae, he said quietly, do you understand what this means? If the council knows you have children, if anyone knows, they become leverage, targets. Every enemy you've ever made will come for them. I know. Then what are you going to do? Min-jae looked at the photo again, at his children's faces, frozen in a moment of innocent happiness. I'm going to protect them. How? By bringing them into this world? By putting guards on a 4-year-old? If I have to. Daejong stood, his voice rising. You can't protect them from what you are. Your father tried that with you, remember? He kept you close, surrounded you with guards, taught you to fight and survive and never trust anyone. And look what it made you. The words hit like bullets. Because Dae-jung was right. Min-jae had become his father, not in spite of the protection, but because of it. So what do you want me to do? Min-jae demanded. Walk away? Pretend they don't exist? I want you to think, Dae-jung said, his voice breaking. I want you to think about what's best for them, not for you. And you think abandoning them is what's best. I think keeping them in the dark is what's best. Let them live normal lives. Pay for everything from a distance. Protect them without them ever knowing who you are. But the moment you step into their world as their father, the moment you claim them publicly, you paint a target on their backs that will never go away. Min-jae turned away, his chest tight. He'd held his daughter's hand. He'd pushed his son on a swing. He'd seen them smile at him with complete trust. How was he supposed to walk away from that? I need options, he said finally. There's only one option, Dae-jung said quietly. You stay away. You let her raise them. You protect them from the shadows. And you live with the fact that they'll never know you. Min-jae's phone buzzed. A text from Ji-hai. Ji-hai. There was a car outside my building tonight. Same one from 3 weeks ago. I'm scared. His heart stopped. He showed Dae-jung the message. They're already watching her, Min-jae said, his voice cold. Which means staying away won't protect them. They're already in danger just by existing. Dae-jung cursed under his breath. Then you need to move them. Tonight. Somewhere secure. Somewhere no one can find them. She won't agree to that. Then make her. You're good at making people do what you want. Min-jae's jaw tightened, but he was already typing a response. Min-jae, pack a bag. I'm coming to get you. All of you. Now. 30 minutes later, he was standing at Ji-hai's door. She opened it with wide, frightened eyes, the twins asleep on the couch behind her. What's happening? She whispered. Someone knows about them. Min-jae said quietly. We need to leave. Now. Leave to where? Somewhere safe. Min-jae, Ji-hee. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I will not let anything happen to you. To them. But you need to trust me. Please. She searched his face, looking for the boy she'd fallen in love with, looking for proof that he wasn't just the king anymore. Okay, she whispered. But we do this my way. No army of guards, no fortress. Just somewhere quiet. He nodded. I have a place. Outside the city. No one knows about it. Not even Dae-jung. How do I know I can trust you? Min-jae stepped closer, his voice soft but fierce. Because they're my children too. And I would burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt them. Ji-hai's eyes filled with tears. That's what I'm afraid of, she whispered. But she turned and started packing. They drove in silence. Minho and Ji-ah were asleep in the back seat, buckled into car seats Min-jae had bought that afternoon. Ji-hai sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her hands trembling in her lap. Where are we going? She asked quietly. A cabin, 2 hours north. My mother's family owned it before she died. No one from the organization knows it exists. Your mother. Ji-hai glanced at him. You never talked about her. There wasn't much to say. She died when I was 6. My father made sure I forgot her. I'm sorry. Min-jae didn't respond. They drove through the darkness, the city lights fading behind them, replaced by empty highways and dense forests. Finally, Ji-hee spoke again. What happens after this? We can't hide forever. I know. Then what's your plan? Min-jae's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I find out who's threatening you. I eliminate the threat. And I make sure it never happens again. By doing what? Killing people? Starting a war? If I have to. Ji-hai turned to look at him, her voice breaking. And what do you think that will teach our children? That violence is the answer? That power is all that matters? It'll teach them that I protect what's mine. They're not possessions, Min-jae. They're people. Innocent, beautiful people who deserve a father who doesn't solve every problem with fear and blood. Her voice rose, and in the back seat, Ji-ah stirred. Min-jae pulled over to the side of the road. He put the car in park and turned to face her. Face. Then tell me what you want, he said, his voice raw. Tell me how to do this. Because I don't know. I don't know how to be what they need. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. Ji-hai's tears spilled over. I want you to choose, she whispered. I want you to look at those 2 babies sleeping in the back seat and decide if they're worth more than your empire, if they're worth more than your pride, if they're worth more than the legacy your father left you. Min-jae looked at the rearview mirror, at Minho, his little face peaceful in sleep, clutching his yellow truck. At Gia, curled up with her head on her brother's shoulder, her butterfly hair clip still in place. "They are," he said quietly. "They're worth everything." "Then prove it," Jihai said. "Don't just say it. Prove it." And for the first time in his life, Min-jae didn't have an answer. Approximate character count, 8,000. The cabin was small, rustic, tucked so deep into the woods that even the moon seemed distant. Min-jae carried the twins inside one at a time, laying them gently on the bedroom's twin beds without waking them. Ji-hee followed, pulling blankets over them, smoothing their hair, whispering soft reassurances they couldn't hear. When she came back to the living room, Min-jae was standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. "We're safe here," he said quietly. "For now." Ji-hee sank onto the couch, exhausted. "How long is for now?" "Until I figure out who sent that photo. Until I neutralize the threat. And then what? We go back to hiding? We run again?" Min-jae turned to face her. "I won't let you run anymore." "Then what's the alternative? Living in a fortress? Having armed guards follow us to the grocery store? Raising our children in fear?" "I don't know." The words burst out of him, raw and desperate. "I don't know, Ji-hee. I've spent my entire life solving problems with strategy and force. But this, I don't know how to solve this." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. "You're scared," she said softly. Min-jae's jaw tightened. "I'm terrified. I've faced down men with guns without flinching, but the thought of failing them." His voice broke. "I can't fail them." Ji-hee stood and crossed the room. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the cracks in his armor. "Then don't try to protect them the way your father protected you," she whispered. "Don't make them afraid of the world. Don't make them hard. Teach them to be strong and kind, powerful and gentle. Everything you could have been if you'd had a choice. I don't know if I can." "Then learn." She reached up and touched his face, her hand trembling. "You're not your father, Min-jae. You never were. You just spent so long pretending to be him that you forgot who you really are." For a moment, they just stood there, two people who'd loved and lost each other, standing in the wreckage of what could have been. And then Min-jae's phone shattered the silence. He pulled it out. Unknown number. He answered. "Yes?" A voice. Distorted. Cold. "You have something that belongs to us." Min-jae's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you understand the position you're in. You took over your father's empire without permission from the original families. You've been operating independently for 3 years. That ends now. What do you want? Control. 50% of your operations. Access to your supply lines. And your complete cooperation. And if I refuse, then the woman and the children become our message to everyone who thinks they can defy us." The line went dead. Min-jae stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear, his entire world collapsing. Ji-hee grabbed his arm. "Min-jae, what is it? What did they say?" He looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Pure, unadulterated fear. "They know where we are," he whispered. "What?" "They knew I would bring you somewhere remote. They've been tracking us." Ji-hee's hand flew to her mouth. "The children!" Min-jae was already moving. He grabbed his keys, his gun from the bag he'd brought, his mind racing through options that were all equally impossible. "We need to leave. Now." "Where?" "If they're tracking us, then I lead them somewhere else. Somewhere away from you." "No." Ji-hee grabbed his arm. "You're not leaving us here alone. I'm not leaving you. I'm drawing them away. Dae-jung will come get you. He's the only person I trust." "Min-jae, Ji-hee, listen to me." He grabbed her shoulders, his voice fierce. "I will not let them use you. I will not let them hurt our children. But if I stay here, I make you targets. If I leave, I might be able to end this. Or you'll get yourself killed. Then I'll die knowing you're safe." Tears streamed down her face. "That's not good enough," she choked. "They need their father. I need—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "What?" he whispered. "What do you need?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with everything they'd lost, and everything they could still have. "I need you to come back," she whispered. "I need you to choose us and come back." Min-jae pulled her into his arms, held her the way he hadn't in 4 years, let himself feel everything he'd buried. "I promise," he whispered into her hair. "I promise I'll come back." And then he let go. He walked to the bedroom door, looked at his sleeping children one more time, their faces peaceful, their world still innocent, and carved that image into his soul. Then he left. Min-jae drove back toward the city. Every mile felt like a countdown. He called Dae-jung. "I need you to go to the cabin. Coordinates are in the glove box of my other car. Get Ji-hai and the twins. Take them to the safe house in the industrial district, the one no one knows about. What's happening? Someone made a move. I'm drawing them out. Min-jae, don't do anything stupid. Just protect them. That's all that matters now. He ended the call. The city lights appeared on the horizon. He was driving straight back into the war he'd tried to leave behind. His phone buzzed. Another message. A photo. His heart stopped. It was Minho and Jia, sleeping in the cabin bedroom, taken 30 minutes ago. The text below read, "You can't protect them, but you can save them. Meet us at the old warehouse district. Pier 17. Alone. 1 hour. Or we come back for them." Min-jae's hands shook on the steering wheel. They'd been inside the cabin, while he was standing there talking to Ji-hai, while his children slept 20 feet away. They'd been inside. He called Dae-jung back. "Change of plans. Get to the cabin in 10 minutes. Not 20, 10. And don't let anyone follow you." "What's going on?" "Just do it." "And Dae-jung?" His voice broke. "If anything happens to me, you take care of them. You make sure they grow up safe. You promise me." "Min-jae. Promise me." "I promise." Min-jae ended the call and pressed the accelerator to the floor. He was going to Pier 17. He was going alone. And he was going to end this, even if it killed him. Approximate character count. $8,000. Pier 17 was abandoned. Rusted shipping containers. Broken streetlights. The kind of place where bodies were found and questions weren't asked. Min-jae parked his car and stepped out into the cold night air. He was unarmed. They'd told him to come alone, and he'd obeyed, because his children's lives depended on it. He walked toward the pier, his footsteps echoing on concrete, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. A figure emerged from the shadows. Then another. Then 5 more. Men in dark suits. Professionals. The kind who didn't make mistakes. And in the center of them all, an older man. Silver hair. Cold eyes. A face Min-jae recognized from old photographs. Park Sang-min, one of his father's original partners. A man who'd been pushed out when Min-jae took over. A man who'd been waiting for revenge. "Min-jae," Sang-min said, his voice smooth. "You look just like your father. It's almost tragic." Min-jae said nothing. "I assume you received our message. What do you want?" "I already told you. Control, partnership, respect." Sang-min stepped closer. "Your father understood how this world works. You build empires together. You share power. You don't cut out your allies the moment you take the throne." "You weren't allies," Min-jae said coldly. "You were parasites." Sang-min smiled. "Careful. You're in no position to insult us. Not when we know about your family." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "Leave them out of this." "Oh, but they're already in it. The moment you fathered children, you created leverage. And leverage is currency in our world. They're innocent. So was your father. Once. But innocence doesn't last in this life, does it?" Min-jae took a step forward. "If you touch them, you'll what?" Sang-min laughed. "Kill us? Start a war? You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. The only reason you're still breathing is because we want you to understand something." "What?" "Power isn't just about fear. It's about knowing what people love, and destroying it if they don't cooperate." Min-jae's hands curled into fists. "So this is a threat." "This is a business proposal," Sang-min corrected. "You give us what we want, and your family lives. You refuse, and they become a memory." For a long moment, Min-jae just stared at him, at the man who'd helped build his father's empire, who'd profited from blood and suffering, who now stood here demanding submission. And Min-jae realized something. He was done. Done playing this game. Done pretending power was worth anything. Done being his father's son. "No," he said quietly. Sang-min raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You can have the empire. You can have the operations, the money, the territory. Take it all. I don't care anymore." Sang-min's eyes narrowed. "You think we'll just let you walk away? You think you can quit and live happily ever after with your little family? I think you want power, not blood. And if I'm out, there's no point in killing me. I'm no longer a threat." "You're always a threat," Sang-min said softly. "As long as you're alive, you're your father's heir. As long as you exist, people will follow you. So no, Min-jae, you don't get to walk away." He nodded to one of his men. The man raised a gun and pointed it at Min-jae's head. Min-jae didn't move, didn't flinch. He just thought of Minho's laugh, Jia's smile, Ji-hai's tears, and realized that dying for them was the easiest choice he'd ever made. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "But know this, if I die, Dae-jung takes over, and he's 10 times more ruthless than I ever was. You'll start a war you can't win." Sang-min hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, everything changed. Headlights flooded the pier, cars, multiple vehicles, screeching to a stop, doors opening, footsteps. Dae-young emerged from the lead car, flanked by 20 armed men. "Lower your weapons," Dae-young commanded, his voice cold. "Now." Sang-min's men hesitated. Dae-jung walked forward until he stood beside Min-jae. "You made a mistake," Dae-jung said to Sang-min. "You threatened his family, and that makes this personal, not just for him, for all of us." He gestured to the men behind him. "These are loyalists, men who've served the family for decades, men who remember what happens to people who threaten children." Sang-min's confidence wavered. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Dae-jung's voice was ice. "You have two choices. Leave now and never come back, or we end this tonight." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Sang-min nodded to his men. They lowered their weapons. "This isn't finished," Sang-min said, his eyes locked on Min-jae. "You can't protect them forever. Watch me," Min-jae said softly. Sang-min and his men retreated into the shadows. The pier fell silent. Dae-jung turned to Min-jae. "Are you okay? Are they safe?" "Safe house. Triple security. I have my best people on them." Min-jae's legs nearly gave out. He leaned against a shipping container, his whole body shaking. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Dae-jung said quietly. "This was just the first move. They'll come back, and next time, they won't negotiate." Min-jae looked at his oldest friend. "Then what do I do?" "You make a choice," Dae-jung said. "The one you've been avoiding. You either stay in this world and put them in constant danger, or you leave it behind completely. There's no middle ground anymore. I can't just walk away. They'll still come for me. Not if you disappear properly. New identities, new country, new life. I can make it happen. And leave everything behind? You'd be leaving this behind." Dae-jung gestured to the pier, the darkness, the violence. "But you'd be taking them with you. Isn't that worth it?"
What you've heard so far is only the surface. These stories weren't meant to be consumed in fragments. They were created to be experienced from beginning to end. When you unlock full access, you receive 30 complete audio stories, over 30 hours of immersive storytelling, private members-only area not available on YouTube. No ads, no interruptions. Listen on any device, anytime. Lifetime access. And that's not all. You also get access to an exclusive private community where you can talk directly with me and decide your own stories once a week. But be aware, access for new members is closing. Scan the QR code now or click the pinned link in the comments. What was never said continues now. If you choose to enter.
Min-jae closed his eyes. His children, his empire, his past, his future, everything colliding in one impossible choice. "I need to see them," he said finally. "I need to see them and then I'll decide." Dae-jung nodded. "Let's go." The safe house was an industrial loft in the warehouse district. Unmarked, anonymous. Min-jae walked in to find Ji-hee sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. The twins were asleep on a makeshift bed of blankets on the floor, peaceful and unaware. Ji-hee stood when she saw him. "You're alive," she breathed. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "I'm alive," he whispered. "And they're safe. We're all safe. For how long? I don't know." She pulled back to look at him. "What happened?" He told her everything. The pier, Sang-min, the choice Dae-jung had laid out. When he finished, Ji-hee was silent for a long moment. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. Min-jae looked at the twins, at their innocent faces, at the life they deserved. "I'm going to give them a father," he said quietly. "A real one. Not a king, not a monster, just a father." Ji-hee's eyes filled with tears. "Does that mean?" "It means I'm walking away. From all of it. The empire, the power, the legacy, all of it. They'll come after you. Then we run. We disappear. We start over somewhere they'll never find us. And you're okay with that? Giving up everything you've built?" Min-jae looked at her, at the woman he'd loved and lost and found again. "I'm not giving up everything," he said softly. "I'm choosing what actually matters." Ji-hee kissed him, soft and desperate and full of hope. And for the first time in years, Min-jae felt like he could breathe. 2 weeks later, they were gone. New names, new country, new life. Min-jae became Daniel Park, a business consultant. Ji-hee became Grace Park, an elementary school teacher. Min-ho and Ji-ah started kindergarten in a small coastal town where no one knew their past. And for 6 months they were happy. They were a family. Min-jae learned to push swings and read bedtime stories. He learned that being a father meant showing up, not controlling. He learned that love was stronger than fear, and he started to believe they'd actually made it, that they were finally free. Then, on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, Min-jae was walking home from the park with the twins when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? A voice he didn't recognize. Hello, Mr. Park. Or should I say, Min-jae. His blood turned to ice. Who is this? Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. You thought you could disappear. You thought you could walk away and start over. What do you want? I want you to know that running doesn't work. Not anymore. We found you. We know where you are. We know everything. Min-jae's eyes shot to the twins, playing on the sidewalk ahead of him, laughing and completely unaware. If you touch my family, oh, we're not going to touch them, the voice said, almost amused. We're going to take them, and we're going to make you watch, just like your father did to us. What are you talking about? 20 years ago, your father destroyed my family. He took everything from us. My brother, my father, our legacy. And now, it's time you paid for his sins. The line went dead. Min-jae stood frozen on the sidewalk, his heart pounding, his entire world collapsing again. They'd found him. After everything. After running. After changing their lives. They'd found him. And this time, they weren't coming for his empire. They were coming for his children. Min-jae looked at Min-ho and Jia, their faces bright with joy, their laughter filling the air, and realized the nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. If you want to know who's coming for the family now, if you want to discover the secret from the past that Min-jae never knew about, leave 15 comments on this video. When we hit 15 comments, part 2 drops today. Don't miss it. This is just the beginning.